Okay, we're gonna get started. Call to order the Wilton Board of Education meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. I don't think I have to do an official motion for this, but with reports and recognitions, we're gonna go, after the block schedule, we're gonna go ahead and jump into number 8, which is the building and district action plans, because a lot of our fans are gonna be here. And since they all have to be at school tomorrow morning, we'll try to expedite that a little bit. Consent agenda, has everyone had a? Public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come and offer any thoughts? Seeing no one, there will be a public comment period also at the end of the meeting. Consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda?
Yep.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Question. Oh.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain because I've missed so many meetings. I really,
Okay, so one abstention. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one, that is approved. Reports and recognition. We're going to go right to the PTA appreciation and presentation of yearbooks. One of the best things we do all year.
I don't know if we have yearbooks. Oh,
yeah, we do.
We have yearbooks, oh, good.
Came in with some
Okay, great.
yearbooks. PTA
We're gonna double do,
Double duty. My name is Carolyn Lyon. This year, I was my first year for Cider Mill PTA president with my who had to stay home. So Melissa Roos, who was our parent, along with 4 other parents, they, along with 29 fifth graders, put together this year's yearbook. The kids were able to choose the cover, and they were tasked to make sure that the kids inside only appeared 2 times to share the wealth as to who gets to be in the yearbook. So they were in charge of the checklist and making sure the kids appeared at least twice, and if one kid had 5 checks, they went back, found a picture, and replaced it with someone who needed more visibility. The fifth graders also did some of the surveys on where kids wanted to live in the future and what kind of jobs they wanted to have in the future. So that's what they did this year.
Was
They
there
really
a
worked
where
on
do
it
they
all
want to
year.
live?
I'm sorry?
Where do they want to live?
My son wrote Utah. A lot of kids did write Wilton.
Okay.
I think it's because that's where we had a great summer vacation there last summer. So,
Wonderful.
so there's copies for you.
thanks,
Great.
Kat. Appreciate it.
Have fifth graders gotten their copies yet?
The kids got theirs after 5th grade. Yes, this is not secretive anymore.
Okay.
The
Thank
kids
you.
received theirs after 5th grade fun day on Wednesday. Field day, sorry.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
I don't see any other yearbook folks here.
That's it?
So I think that's it for the yearbooks.
Okay.
So I'd like to just take a minute and recognize our PTA presidents. That's the 3 of the 5. So as you all know, because you did the work yourselves, leading a PTA is incredibly challenging work. The amount of time these women spend coordinating, collaborating, connecting, in some cases smoothing, helping is really, I don't think you can overstate their importance in terms of our partnership with the schools. I've had the pleasure for the last couple of years to meet monthly with them, and I've really appreciated the candor, the recommendations, the willingness to partner and proactively, address problems. And I think we've got a lot to celebrate and be thankful for. They've really been wonderful. So on behalf of all of you, on behalf of our school system, we want to just ask you to stand and say thank you. And we have a very small present. I don't think you all know Tammy Thornton, who is our outgoing Miller Driscoll president. Carolyn needs no introduction. She's at Cider Mill. And, of course, Savit Constantine. So here, we have just some small things for you. Right. So make it as awesome as possible.
President.
Thank you. We'll miss our meetings. Thank you. So nice to see you. Thank you. We'll see you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I will see you next year. In this for 2 years.
It's one of the fun things we get to do.
Yeah, we just want to mention Amanda Patena, who was the co-president at Cider Mill this year, and as you know, Kara Berghaus is the president of our SEPTA,
Oh, right.
and she's been a wonderful addition. So we'll make sure those guys get their flowers.
I have a quick board chair's report. Tonight's agenda includes a review of the inventory of gifts that have been presented to our schools this year. Reviewing and accepting this list is an annual responsibility of the board, and while gifts to our schools are always appreciated, this year they seem especially important, given that our request for a modest budget increase was rejected. Gifts include donations from individual students and their families to help purchase classroom supplies, donations to specific programs, including the Library Learning Commons and Athletics Program, funds raised by our PTAs to support district-wide programs and initiatives, and public and private third-party contributions. Regardless of the size or scope, each of these gifts was given in the spirit of helping to improve the Wilton Public Schools. On behalf of the Board of Education, our deep gratitude to all who contributed to our schools in this way. Please know that a gift in support of education is a gift that will bear fruit for years to come. A sincere thank you to everyone whose name or organization is listed in this report.
Great, thanks. Just want to ask Tammy, Carolyn, and Saba, do you want to take a minute and talk about some of the donations you made to the school and what those contributions were? Yeah, come on, why don't you come back up?
Sorry.
Just what they want.
All right, I'll start, sure. I have it on my phone, I'm sorry. So for Miller Driscoll, we, every year we do our teacher startup grants, which allots each teacher a certain fund to help support whatever they buy for their classroom over the summer, out of their own pocket. And we were able to raise that from the typical 150 to 250 this year for each teacher, which was really great. So of our teachers that used it, we did give out about $8,200 this year to our staff to help support purchasing for their classrooms, which was really great. Our general grants was much smaller than usual this year, just because of the weather delays and issues we had all year long with our fundraising. But we were able to give general grants of $2,700 that went to some playground sheds to store some more of our equipment on the playground. Our preschool had asked for some additional funds to bring in stepping stones during their story theater. And we also funded the first grade field trip to the Wilton Historical Society, which we were able to add as a line item moving forward so that we can continue to support that field trip, which was very successful for the first grade this year. And then our annual Giving Tree program that happens in the winter time, January, February time, where parents can give directly to the teachers. It's not funds for the PTA, but we just are the middleman to facilitate. We had just over $10,000 of parent direct donations to their teachers to buy additional games, supplies, activities, the big free play movement at Miller Driscoll, so teachers asked for Legos and different kinds of toys and board games and different things to help enhance that in their classroom. So, although not as big as a year as usual, we were still happy to do what we could this year for the gifts and donations.
Very generous. Thank you.
At Cider Mill, again, we also do a startup grant for our teachers. We did 200 this year for returning teachers. It's and 300 for newly certified teachers. So in total, we gave a little over $13,000 in startup grants to those teachers because they were buying stuff out of their own pockets. We were able to fund about $1,500 into a new program for the day of Halloween, Fall into Reading. It was literacy based, and the kids decorated a pumpkin based on a character of one of their favorite books, and then they lined the hallways. So that was a fun day for a fun activity for a really fun day. We were able to co-sponsor the internet safety presentation with Scott Driscoll. We co-sponsored it with Middlebrooks PTA. We just recently purchased some tables to go outside at the two playgrounds, 4 on each side, so that the kids have a place to sit and talk with their friends if they didn't want to go play kickball. But this way they don't have to sit on the sidewalk, kind of be in the way of basketball games or kickball games. So they will have a designated place to just kind of chill and relax during their recess period if that's what they want to do. We also were able to repeat our enrichment programs for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, a brain challenge for 5th grade, poetry in motion for 4th grade, and forces in motion for 3rd grade. And we repeated the famous Zumba class in gym class. The kids love it. And we were also able to provide supplies for the art show for families to do different activities before our school annual art show. So in total, we spent a little over $39,000 this year on gifts and grants for the school and for the staff.
What are your primary fundraisers?
We did this year, we have our big walkathon, and it was the one in color this year. Right, Jen?
Yeah.
There's a picture of Jen in some color
I
somewhere.
don't know what color.
So we did our walkathon. We also did, the end of the year, we did something called the Staffel Raffle this year, where the kids were able to put tickets into a bucket and based on the activity that was donated by a teacher, either lunch, pizza lunch with 2 friends. I think Jen did breakfast with whoever won her raffle. So that raised a lot of money also
That's
for
great.
us.
It's really,
Yes.
really creative.
And then we have the pictures and little things that the book fair and stuff like that comes in. So it was a great year.
Sounds like it.
So at the high school, we had, I guess, 2 main focus. One, working with Kim Zemo, bringing in Kate Has No Home Here. And we also funded the Yellow Dress, part of the Safe Dating Project that Kim runs. And that will actually become a line item in the PTA budget, which we might expand to encourage other, in addition to the Yellow Dress, some other programs. And then we just at our usual, teacher requests, French magazines. Right off the top of my head, I'm not sure of them. But then the other one would be the festival, where we brought in a couple of the speakers, a couple of the art performances, which looked fabulous this year. New signage that we contributed to, new art projects, art supplies. So.
It's great. Thank you. Oh, it's incredible. It's just incredible. Yeah, and especially when you sort of list them all together like that, because you frequently hear, oh, the PTA is doing this, that, but when the power of putting them all together is really impressive.
Yeah, I neglected to mention Hillary Springer, who is the outgoing president at Middlebrook, and that PTA has been really strong. They've done quite a bit to support Middlebrook School. So,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recharge over the summer.
I just have a couple of quick updates, if you don't mind. I want to just say a quick congratulations to our high school theater program, who won 2 Halo Awards earlier this week. They earned Best Ensemble for Witness for the Prosecution and Best Musical for Newsies. I also want to recognize our girls and boys lacrosse teams. Our girls advanced as far as the Class L semifinal game and went down in a heartbreaker to our nemesis, Darien. Our boys beat Prep last night in the semifinal game and will face Darien in the championship on Saturday. So we're looking forward to them to bring
That's
home
fabulous.
the championship.
Yeah, okay, so 7-6 against Prep last night. One of the most exciting games you will ever see.
It was.
3:30 on Saturday. You need to be at
Brian
Brian
McMahon.
McMahon.
Right.
Okay? Everybody who's watching or listening or whatever, if you can get there. We've beaten them once this year, 4-3, which was an unbelievable game, and we get them again, okay, for the championship. We played 2 incredibly exciting games. We beat Buchanan on Saturday, 13-11, which was just the first time this year we've beaten them. Okay, we'd lost to them a couple of times prior by a goal. So it's been an incredible season. We had to play in to qualify. So we were totally unranked, had to
Yeah.
play in to earn our spot, and we're now playing for the championship. So all the support you can give. There's a great crowd last night at Prep. It was fantastic. And so you won't be disappointed. You'll see great lacrosse. So it's thrilling. From the way our season began, it was,
Sure.
these kids have
Yeah.
stuck with it. So
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Are you done?
All set?
That's it. Okay. Committee reports. Business ops.
no, we haven't met. We're meeting next week.
Okay. Teaching and learn. Policy met, and I have really nothing new to report except ongoing work on therapy dogs policy, a new therapy dog policy. We do have a number of policies on the agenda tonight. With that, review and discuss the Wilton High School block schedule.
We have quite the talented entourage here this
Awesome.
evening, as you will see. So we're pleased to provide an update on the block schedule implementation that the board asked for a few weeks ago when we presented. As you can see, I have a very committed group of educational leaders here this evening that wanted to be here, and I'll let them just brief. I think you know most of them, they're venerable educational leaders, but just by name and department very briefly, starting with David, just a brief introduction here.
Dave Willock, social studies.
Peggy Muir, mathematics.
Jim Sheridan, English.
Scott Webster, World Languages.
Jim Lucy, Science.
District State's Flight Coordinator.
When do we get down? Hi. Can I get in here? Okay, come on, you're part of the team. So we had a successful, come on, Joyce. We had a successful 8-day implementation period, and that's what we're calling it now. It's not a trial, it's not a pilot. You know, we are implementing this next year, and thank you so much for the board for voting to approve it. And I think tonight there's a lot of good news to report. We're going to take an objective approach to it, but a lot of really good information to share. The experience went really very smoothly. Sometimes when you build a schedule for one schedule and then you implement it on another, you might have hurdles that you might not foresee, but we really had a smooth implementation period logistically, and it went very well, I think, for students and for faculty. I want to credit our teachers and our students for really giving it approaching it with an open mind and really giving it a good attempt, and I think really engaging in the longer periods, which essentially is what it came down to, longer periods every other day. The teacher feedback has been really effusive and so positive. I think you're going to hear some of that from the instructional leaders tonight. It's been very strong, and I think we were really excited to engage in the 8-day period, and we're even more excited about next year. We think this is going to be really good for our students and for our faculty. We did experience what I would describe as just a dramatically less rush pace. I mean, in spite of the fact that the seniors are out of the building and on the second floor they're not there, in other parts of the building, I mean, the change is palpable, and that's what is reported typically from schools that adopt this schedule. I think that's part of the factor that's going to have a real positive effect on our students ultimately and our staff with a less harried pace, if you will. The student feedback really is overall positive, and then when you have 1,256 adolescents, you would expect some dissenting votes as well. But I think a lot of the students who went in and thought this may not work for me, really I think we've had some real shifts, and that was what the ILs and the teachers were reporting. So what I want to do is just report some of the pros and cons from the students, and then we have some thoughtful questions that we thought you might be interested in around the instructional core and instructional shifts and professional learning. So some of and these are consistent reports from students in some of the feedback on Padlet and going out and talking to a lot of students and feedback from teachers. And I'll be very quick, and these are in students' words, okay? Days go by quicker, less stress, things are more spaced out, making the school day more relaxed, not as much work per night. We can get more work done and be more productive in class. And then some, just a window into the teenager, the adolescent mind. They like the 7-minute passing times. Those 2 additional minutes really take a little bit of stress off of kids. Longer frees. If you're a student, you love your free periods, and now they're much longer. And then if you are lucky enough to have a free in the morning or the afternoon, you might get to leave school super early or super late. So that's something we need to address. We kept the junior privilege in place, and I think that was appropriate. But we'll have to talk about that, I think, next year, looking at with our younger students and have a shared idea about just the early release and late arrival. So that was some of the student feedback that was consistent. Some of the cons, and this was a pro, but it's also a con, longer class periods. You know, you have to sit for longer class periods. We anticipated this, but harder to pay attention and sit still. The idea that students have to focus for a prolonged period of time. Students reported, you know, we're hearing many teachers change their teaching style, but some teachers may not have, and I think we need to recognize that's a growth area. It's new to us, and again, I think the teachers really took this on, and there's been a lot of professional learning that our leaders will talk about, but that was something that came up. Teachers don't always give breaks, but we've agreed that that's going to be, you know, appropriate to the class, and, you know, give the students what they need. If they need a break, a little break, we fully endorse that, and that's teacher discretion and feedback from the students. This was something that we didn't really hear much of until just recently. Sometimes people, and I think they're referring to kids, can forget assignments that were due, meaning it's 2 days later. Although, as I discussed with Sabat today, and the feedback from the parents is that teachers are really doing a good job with Google Classroom and keeping up on it. So students and families should know what the assignments are for, you know, a 5 to 10 day period. So those were some of the things that came up from the students. Again, overall, it was really positive. We're looking forward to next year. We have a lot of work to do as we continue to evaluate it, but we're going to be ready. As I said the last time we presented the board, we'll be ready, and I think you're going to hear that from some of our leaders here. So Scott is going to talk about some of the great work that our teachers and instructional leaders have done, and then each IL, there's 5 core ILs here, are just going to answer one question, and I think you saw those in the board brief. You saw 4 of them, there's one more, and then Kim's going to talk about just the, you know, social emotional learning and impact on school climate. So, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. Yeah, so we spent several department meetings discussing how to approach the 2-week pilot. We did a lot of review of literature and different blogs online, one of which is called The Cult of Pedagogy, that I know Jim is a fan of too, by a woman named Jennifer Gonzalez, who has a lot of really great insight and tips on how to run a successful block period, as well as some pitfalls, you know, things to avoid or be afraid of. So we spent some more time, actually one of the pieces of advice that she gives, which I remember when I taught on block many years ago, that my mentor told me, was that if the kids are asking for a break, then you're doing something wrong. And so with that in mind, another department meeting time we spent by dividing into groups of 2 or 3 and coming up with a lesson plan, and just keeping in mind that, you know, you really should have 4 or 5 or 6 different chunks, activities, student as teacher, games, direct instruction, workstations, et cetera, et cetera. And so we found that to be really productive. We shared out those mini lesson plans, and then we launched right into our pilot. And then the day after the pilot, we were all sad because we had to come back to the regular schedule. So, but I anticipate definitely continuing that work, because we like to share and learn new things as a department and work together to be as successful as we can with this new program.
Jim's going to talk about some of the professional learning and reading that faculty engaged in.
Yeah, some reading and some legwork too. We really were very fortunate that the administration did some of the legwork for us in terms of 2 years ago we had the opportunity to visit Brookfield High School as well as Fairfield Ward. We had substitute teachers provided for and contacts at those schools. So, you know, we got to go there in person and observe classes. There was time allowed for us to interview students as well as interview teachers and talk to administrators at the end of the days. And you know, visiting there first person to me is more valuable than some of the research that we did, because we could ask questions and get ideas that weren't anticipated or that you can't get from reading a website or a blog or something like that. Teachers from Fairfield Ward were invited to our school. They visited every department's department meetings. We had great question and answer sessions with them. And then this year, we got to visit Brookfield High School, New Milford High School, and New Fairfield High School. So, you know, again, more and more of the faculty got to get out of this building and go to other places. And again, the same kind of thing where we observed a bunch of different kinds of classes, but also had time to interview students and teachers and talk to administration at the end of the day. So that was probably some of the best stuff. A lot of our individual department members who had contacts with some schools that had block experience, you know, myself and a couple other teachers used to work at New Milford. We had some of our colleagues from Wilton who went off to teach at New Fairfield or work in administration there. You know, Rich Sanzo and Mike Chappelle, they were great. We have some friends at Newtown that went to block, switched back to regular, now they're thinking of going back to block. So we had some contacts with them as well, all of which was very valuable. As far as some of the reading and research, Scott mentioned the Cult of Pedagogy website, and an interesting thing about it, when we were researching, there were a lot of print resources from the early 90s when a lot of schools initially tried block in somewhat different circumstances. And we did read some of that material, and there were some great ideas. Notable how things have changed. It was very much pre-computer, much of the kind of technology we use now. So a lot of the philosophical ideas or ideas about classroom management were great, but a lot of the practical stuff from some of the print sources wasn't as sharp as the ongoing organic websites that had a lot of advice about using the block. So we thought that was interesting, just the difference between seeing a PDF from 2004 versus a more organic website from 2018. But yeah, the Cult of Pedagogy, that it is a great resource. But overall, I think a lot of us probably benefited more from reaching out to Connecticut area peers at other schools than we did with some of the print and online research that we did. But thanks to all involved for letting us get out of the building and make those contacts.
So Peg is going to talk about just different approaches to instruction, and I would tell you that math, that was somewhat skeptical, having met with Cindy and Peg recently and some of the teachers there, they've been swayed to some extent about how can they make instruction really rich for students in longer periods in mathematics, and so she has some good insights on that, Peg.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about how it felt different, and teachers and students thought it felt less stressful. We also, the teachers thought the uninterrupted time, they got a lot of work done, and the classes went faster than both teachers and students thought it would go. The three things I have about the difference in the classroom is all the teachers thought they had more time to do fun activities, or more fun activities. For instance, in a I was teaching a statistics class, and the topic was hurricanes, and I got to play a clip on Hurricane Sandy. When they came in, they watched it was maybe a 5-minute clip on Hurricane Sandy, really got them involved and interested in it, and then that was my springboard into the lesson, which was kind of nice. Some of the kids created posters, and we had time to go outside to make the posters, which we normally wouldn't have time to do. Other teachers had stations around the room where kids went from activity to activity, just getting up and moving around. So it's just a different way of thinking about how you're going to deliver or get information from these kids. Also, we use Desmos or online kind of graphing things often. And instead of the teacher showing this is how you do this Desmo, we could do activities where the kids got to make conjectures about what they saw, what they thought, and things like that. So that's the fun activity part. We also had time to help kids individually, which is not as frequent as it normally is. So while some kids worked on a task, you could be over here helping these kids or having small group instruction to a certain group that needed it, which was kind of helpful. Also, teachers just had generally more time to walk around the room and watch kids work. The third thing was it worked really well it was actually 4 things, for projects. So my kids were doing a project and they worked on this project. They actually made escape rooms, and we did our first escape room today, and it was really fun. They had a great time doing calculus, not just and chemistry. They had to pull in another subject, and they picked chemistry. Mr. Lucy. And then the other thing, which I think is a huge positive, is that we got to collect more data real time. So when the kids walked in the room and we wanted to know if they understood what they did the last class, we could give them a problem or an online, to answer it online, and we would have that data immediately and be able to process it while we're in the classroom, because the class was long, as well as exit tickets the same way, where at the end of the class, sometimes we run out of time and can't give them an exit ticket or anything like that. So there was time to do that, and then you could look at the data and say, okay, let me change this, or maybe, no, I did great, so, yeah, it was good. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. David, what did it look like for your students with the longer periods in the block schedule?
So our department would rate it as a great success. We wish we were doing it for the rest of the year. A lot of what I would say would echo what others have said on the panel. Students were engaged. I think that was a concern, that they wouldn't be engaged. In our discipline, we really broke things up, like we were talking about the Cult of Pedagogy website. We also looked at that. So it's different stations activities or long-term projects where students can work on something and then are conferencing with them, whereas before maybe you could meet with 8 students in a period. Now you can meet with way more than that. Some teachers were reporting that homework completion was better than it had been, and some teachers were, I know this is anecdotal, but that attendance was actually better because students were afraid if they were to miss a day, they would miss more, so attendance was better. But overall engagement was up. Some teachers were saying at the end of the day they were a little bit tired, but overall it was a really good experience and we were happy. We're excited for next year.
Okay. Jim, Lucy, future steps, planning and learning, and
Well, schedule changes are good. It was 1989 when Wilton made the schedule change that allowed them to hire 2 new science teachers, Jim Lucy and Jim Liptak. So I'm happy to be through my second round of schedule change. So I don't know if I'll last another 30 years for the next schedule change. Science department overwhelmingly supported the schedule change. It basically gives us that large block of time that we've always enjoyed in doing science labs. We're faced with the increasing pressures of next generation science standards and changing how we teach science, not only the science content in what we teach. And so with a phenomena base, the 87 minutes is a little shorter than our double period, but we can make that work. The team here and the high school administration supported the use of the minis. So the science teachers would have a block of time, and then we would have a mini on one of the next couple of days. And that allows us to do that processing of the labs and move the curriculum forward. So science teachers overwhelmingly support the block to the point to where we offer the services to any department who wanted to see how we currently utilize for 30 years our double lab period. And the math department was very gracious in taking us up on it, and we had a group of science teachers talking with the math teachers. The block schedule, any major change like this is a wonderful opportunity because it allows us in our departments to really focus on a common approach or common curriculum delivery amongst different sections of the same course. And so in science, I have the biology teachers working, the chemistry teachers working, the physics teachers working on how we're actually going to manipulate our schedules with NGSS and make the block work. So at the end of the day, science teachers were extremely tired because the block went, our days were 2, 4, 6, 8 and 1, 3, 5, 7. And I teach 2, 4, 6, 8. So at the end of the day, I didn't know if I lived in Wilton or what was going on. But we know next year, I looked at the schedules and they're mixed up a little bit, so we're not going to have one day on. My students were saying, "You're not doing anything tomorrow." I said, "Oh no, I'm recovering from today." And they all came in during every free period because we needed to cover the curriculum. So I think it was an overall a good process. Now I'm looking forward to our united approach in supporting each other and making sure that we move forward.
part of what Jim's referring to, as I said, so the current schedule running was built for the 7-period day, and so you transition that to the block, and what we had to be careful about was, and we analyzed this in advance, was could teachers have 4 in a row? And we found out that indeed they could, so we brought in substitutes to make sure that teachers would have breaks. Some teachers, like Jim and others that I witnessed, said, no, I want to teach my classes, and there was a sub in there with them. I actually saw that with some of the math teachers as well. Teachers don't want to, give up their students, but we did plan for that contingency, so that's what he's referring to. Yeah. Kim, your sense as the civic and social instructional leader and safe school climate coordinator.
Well, I think we were sitting here recently looking at the Sony Luther data, and we know how stressed our kids out. So from a health and safety perspective, this is not the answer, but I think it is one step in the right direction in terms of helping to influence the climate in high school. And it was really, I mean, repeat some of the things that were said, but it was palpable, the different feel in the atmosphere during the block days. And talking with a variety of students, some of our more at-risk students that I'm involved with, but even other students, I think they were pleasantly surprised. They really liked the feel. They were surprised by some of the classes they were concerned were going to be way too long and boring, that teachers were teaching differently. I think one thing, it gives us an opportunity for a break maybe throughout the block, and we're with the support staff working to come up with a menu of ideas for teachers, like mindfulness breaks and quick strategies that they could use during the block time to either get connected, more connected with their students, or give them some strategies. So I think overall we're really excited about the opportunity that this presents. So.
And we wanted to just have the core departments here this evening. I think it paints the picture of where we are right now. And I'm not going to report out on this, but as you might expect, the feedback from the fine and performing arts, the interventionists, and the applied arts, they were really salivating to have longer periods where they could do some of the instructional experiences that would be more beneficial to students, project-based learning. Joe, the interventionist, talked about stations, writing experience where they're able to have coaching rounds to get students longer experience with writing assignments, and so they're really very much in favor of it as well. The faculty is on board, and I think the students, in fairness, we took the approach, don't ask them too many questions during the first week, which was part of the advice, and then we did some, just some surveying and talked to a lot of kids in a few informal focus groups and some Padlets with science classes, and got a lot of good feedback and data from students to consider. So we'll open up to any questions you may have or thoughts you want to share from the Board of Education.
I got stuck on the teachers teaching all in a row. That's going to get worked out for next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you approach the scheduling process with block scheduling, most of our teachers teach 5 classes. Science has 4, PE Health has 6. What you try to do certainly is with teachers, if you have 5, you'd have 3 on one day and 2 on the other. PE teachers would have 3 on each day, and then science with the minis, you just balance those out. But the bulk of the faculty at Wilton High School that teach 5 would have 3 and 2, or 2 and 3 on the A day or the B day, if you will.
Will there be instances of teachers just lecturing for the entire time, or will we always try to break that up?
I'll address that first, and let's hear from somebody else. Our conversations have been, and they've been, I think, pretty candid and open. You can't teach the same way, and you heard that about different instructional tasks and stations, and you hear some of the research about three mini lessons, if you will. We have to, if that is happening, we have to work with them, because frankly, you just can't sustain that as a teacher. You can't sustain that. We know it's not good for kids. So, we've had those conversations with the ILs. I think they've had conversations with some of the people in their departments. Certainly is not the norm, and if that's going on, that's something we need to address as leaders and help with professional learning and/or coaching. Through the instructional coaching process, that we need to. This is an opportunity to shift and teach students differently. At this point, any other thoughts on that?
I just want to echo what Bob said. I think the message has been very clear from the start, from the top all the way down, that would be an ineffective model to use and an outdated model to use, especially for 85 minutes, much less 45. But from the administration at faculty meetings, from ILs at department meetings, and really from one peer to another, I think the understanding is widespread across the faculty, and the message gets reinforced quite a bit. And yeah, as Bob said, with the instructional coach model, as well as 2 very active librarians, Barb Lyons and Jackie, really supplying a lot of ideas vocally, exuberantly, talking about different things you can do. Teachers have had a lot of support, a lot of reinforcement of this idea that there's a lot of different ways to teach, and that one mode, lecture for an entire 45 or 85 minutes just doesn't cut it anymore. It's been widely reinforced.
Great, thank you.
Is this going to give you more opportunity for peer-to-peer, time that is critical, is one of the things that we hear a lot about, you know, the lack of ability to get with my peers and spend time talking and counseling and advising and discussing. Does this schedule give you more opportunity to do that, perhaps, or not?
Yes, when we leverage its architecture, so it's on the drawing board from the start. When we built the schedule, we wanted that to be reality
Okay.
already for next year. For most of
Good.
the cohorts, we have a lot more common planning time, a lot of more with teachers
Yeah.
when they're on, you know, when they have some breaks in the block,
Yeah.
where they can, you know, get a prep period and still have time to do something
Okay.
else that will involve collaboration. So I think the schedule will support that movement in
Good,
that
because
direction.
that's always been a concern or feedback that we've heard often, that we just don't have time to get together and plan and talk and collaborate and figure out what are we doing together. The other question, students who have learning issues, 85 minutes is an eon. Have you noticed, or did you notice any negative effect on those kids who just struggled at, you know, anyway? Now I've got to be here for 85 minutes, what am I going to do? And they just shut down, or and how are we going to deal with those issues? Because they're real issues, or maybe we don't have that problem. I think I'd be surprised if we didn't, but.
Speaking for my lower level chemistry classes,
Yeah.
I think the key is for the teacher to know their students.
Okay.
And I did notice a couple of my students who have shorter attention spans
Right.
not being able to do that. So then it became me more as a facilitator. I'll need you guys to work on these three, call me over when they're done, collaborate, and then I'm over here doing something else with another group of students. And then I have to keep a watchful eye. So it was a little bit more monitoring that way. So I don't know which of my colleagues mentioning teacher more as a facilitator,
Mhm.
but that seems to be the model you're going, as well as not so much teacher lecture, but if we're talking about a topic in science, you know, give me your impression of the topic, and then can you build on that, and then can you build on that, and then let's wrap that together and come up with 3 salient facts that we can then bring to the next lesson. So it does change how you teach, but when you change how you teach, you have a critical eye towards that segment of the population. At least
That's a
been
concern
my
I have,
experience.
it's going to be tough in some cases to keep those kids engaged for an 85-minute period versus, you know, 40, 45 minutes.
Andrea?
Well, I can give you one anecdote of a student, and then talk a little bit about students who have either attention difficulties or processing difficulties,
Yeah.
and why a block can really be very supportive of that when taught in the way the staff is talking about. My anecdote is I had a young woman come over right before the 8-day period, and she let me have it and told me this was bad and awful and gonna be the worst thing that ever happened to her. Terrible. And I said, okay, well, you know, it's an open-minded 8 days. Let's see what we can do. Dive in, see what it's like. And after the 8 days, she came back and she said, I love it. I love it. It changed how she felt.
The stress went away.
She felt less anxious that she had to
Okay.
shift. In the trade, we call it shifting set. So she starts off in math class and 42 minutes later had to be ready for English. That's a shift of brain, you know, it's moving your brain in different directions. And she felt so much steadier in the class because she could actually sink into the content
That's great.
and
Well,
not
it's
have
one
to
of our
shift fast.
objectives, is to
That's
take some
And
of
so that was
out.
very helpful to her. And she acknowledged that. She said, I thought it was gonna be terrible, but I really love it.
Okay. Good.
And I think that's when you're looking at kids, whether they have attention deficit issues, whether they have processing speed issues. Sometimes kids with processing speed are just starting to catch on when that bell rings after 42 minutes. With the 87 minutes, they have time to process the language and information happening so that when they leave that class, they have an ownership they didn't have before. And that's what teaching, when you break that 87 minutes up into 3 small mini lessons, it also gives the teacher the chance to build activities that come from different perspectives. So that youngster who may need something with more visual support has an opportunity to get that and sink into the content. So I know it sounds counterintuitive to say that a student with an attentional issue will do better in a longer block, but given movement, given opportunities to use different strategies, it actually is a better way to capture their brain so that they can process the information, and gain mastery before they have to move on to something else.
Good. Okay, good.
I think it's all been wonderful news here and your process of getting to this point. Really, kudos to everyone, and we've heard a lot of good stuff tonight. I'm just wondering, what is the effect, when you talk about curriculum, you've got the content topics to cover, and then you want to do it in depth. And so it seems like the block schedule certainly helps the depth part. So are we finding, or do you think there'll be any trade-offs with the number of topics? And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just wondering, is there any tension there? As you go into more depth and you have kids more personalized and you have them doing more group and you can consult with them. In the meantime, instead of covering 8 math concepts, or, is it 7? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just wondering what the effect on the sort of linear sequence of content will be, or if any.
Can I answer? I feel like it's especially important now because one builds upon the other.
Or even in world language, just how much
World language
vocabulary
also.
can you absorb?
I think what happened, and it's a huge worry for us, we think we're gonna lose content, oh no, but I think what is really going to happen is, you learn a topic, say quadratic equations, you learn it so well when you saw it the first time, that the second time you're not repeating. We do repeating like September, October, November. I feel like we're teaching what they already learned because they forgot it or they didn't get this part of it or whatever, and we seem to repeat a lot. And I think we're going to remove the repeating.
So the reviews will sort of
So the
shorten.
reviews will shrink, and then the depth of what they're getting, they're going to understand why. And I love that they'll understand why this works the way it does and where this connects to something else. Where I feel like the pace that we have right now, that gets lost somehow. It seems more discreet.
And sometimes the criticism of our curriculum has been that we've tried to smush too much in. So my question was not meant to be a criticism.
No,
It's
I
fine
understand.
if perhaps we don't do
Yeah.
as many topics.
The
But
math
I
department-
just wondered what the effect was.
Yeah, we're currently under a curriculum review cycle, and we've taken, and they're still doing some more this summer, but this year they took the priority standards, so the things that are very important for the state of Connecticut, and we made those the focus of our curriculum. So we're streamlining it to start out with, so hopefully it will all go smoothly.
Okay, and then my last question is on homework. What's the effect been in terms of the 2-day lag, and the amount of homework, or is some of the class time used to start it? So just like you don't want teachers lecturing for 85 minutes, you probably also don't want teachers saying, just go ahead and do your homework. So, and I know that's not happening, but, what is the effect on homework? And again, sometimes we give too much to start with, so rethinking it is not a bad idea, but have you seen any effect on it?
Let me address that globally, and then, so that's been one of the topics of conversation. We're glad you're bringing it up, as you can imagine. We had a lot of conversations around that at the leadership table in anticipation of the 8-day period. And, our agreement was, because the students in the meetings that I held in the focus groups, the kids were saying, are we gonna get twice as much homework? There was some rumor out there was gonna be half as much homework. The agreement we had that, we're gonna be very thoughtful with the homework. There's no intention at all, certainly, to double the homework and say you're gonna have twice as much or cut it in half. And I would point out that Chuck's leading a really thoughtful, homework committee right now. But what we do want is we want the students to be able to, leave knowing exactly what's expected and have essentially 2 days to learn how to apportion their time, manage their time, use their own executive functioning and organizational skills to figure out what works best for them. And my charge to this team has been that we really need to find a way to have the students be able to more acutely focus on the 3 or 4 classes they have the very next day, because I think that's one of the major dividends I think that we can derive from the schedule. And I think we bought into that. We had some deep conversations around that, and even in our conversation tonight, over dinner, you know, I think we have that shared agreement, but I think we need to make it more clear for our students, because again, I think there seem to be some misconceptions. I have data from students saying they had more homework, some saying they had less. So I think it's a question just about being clear with the school community, certainly in going into next year upon the evaluative phase of this 8-day period, and just making it very clear. And I think largely they bought in and said, this is how we need to approach it. I also think this is an opportunity with a new schedule to really look at what we're doing with homework and how important it is to what extent is extension of learning or reinforcing learning, to what extent is it busy work, and you know, those are some of the conversations we've had at the IL table. Any specific experiences? I mean, that's been the expectation. Anything you've seen in the 8 days that's worth reporting?
I have one, I just said, it should be noted that not one of our math classes started homework in class over those 2 weeks. Nobody said, okay, start your homework now, not one. Which, and that, we found out after, that wasn't a goal. That was just, when we talked about it afterwards, we realized nobody, you know, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and again, that wasn't meant as a criticism,
No, I
it's
know,
just like,
I know.
how does homework work when it's every other day and they're longer periods and you wanna start it, but see the kids are doing okay, then there's a little bit of a lag. And then the double or the half, or, you know, whatever a teenage brain will think about how that math adds up. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I realized, like, as I was thinking about my questions, they're probably more applicable to after next year when the schedule has been designed for the box scheduling. Like, I hadn't thought about the teacher. I was thinking about the kids having a balanced day between academics and their, you know, make sure that they have the time to take the applied arts and the fine arts, etc. And then I realized that I'm going to ask you this question. I assume you're going to come back and report next year, but I might not be here at this table to hear your answer. But I would be curious, once next fall gets going and the schedule is underway, things like humanities, you know, are they going to be split over 2 days? And will the kids have balance with their different course loads? And with science, you know, and, you know, just looking forward to the update, but whoever's here in my seat next year, it'd be exciting to hear how it goes next year. But it sounds like you're all ready to do it, and thank you for coming tonight and giving us a report on the last 2 weeks.
But we can give you some reassurance now that a lot of that balance is being built in, you know, to the logic of the system, including, you mentioned specifically humanities, yes, there'll be a balance, you know, across days for kids and teachers. That's a big concern, obviously, and we're using technology and hand scheduling to make sure that that balance is there.
One of the great things, applied arts, this is fantastic in applied arts. Because in a 40-minute schedule, you get in, you get your project, get out, and get started with it. It's time to start cleaning up, and you know, it's gone. So I think having long periods of applied arts is a real benefit, a real plus.
And with music and
music and fine all the applied arts.
And the fine arts, I mean,
Yeah,
they're,
applied, yeah.
you know, it's just a ceramics project or a drawing project.
No, I think it's fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
Convection oven, yeah.
Well, we very much appreciate, Chuck's office has been very supportive of the process, and Kevin's been right behind us the whole way, and we really appreciate the support of the board and the opportunity to come and update you. And you're on the journey with us, and you've been very supportive, and we certainly appreciate it. And I think we all think we're doing something that's going to be really good for our kids, and that's what we care about, and our staff members who are here and beyond.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, moving ahead to agenda number 8, which is review and discuss building district action plan updates.
Okay, I will start. I'm just going to go over the two.
Hello?
I'm just going to stand because I had to flip back and forth between a number of slides. So we're going to present an update on our strategic improvement plans this year. I'm going to start with the district action plans, and then we're going to go through the schools. If you recall, at the district level, we have 3 different action plans: one for social emotional learning, one for universal design for learning, and one for performance-based assessments. In the area of social emotional learning, we had several goals. We wanted to create a shared vision about the goals and some of the principles of social emotional learning. We wanted to develop grade level outcome expectations for students. Wanted to talk about programs and assessments. We wanted to see how this would work with SRBI, how we would support students who struggle with their social emotional learning. And we wanted to actually start to implement the ruler program, which we talked to you about pretty extensively. So what I would say is that with this particular action plan, you see here, we made a great deal of progress. So what we have done is that we did develop a program philosophy for social emotional learning. And I have to say, I don't know that I share that with you, but it's a very robust program philosophy. It outlines all the goals we want for students, as well as the guiding principles for teachers about how they can support students in acquiring those skills. That particular program philosophy has been shared with all of the staff in every building. In terms of developing the outcomes, I have to give credit to one of our teachers at Cider Mill by the name of Jen Nagelheim. Jen is a real rock star. And she led a group of people on the Social Emotional Learning Committee to develop grade level outcomes for our 3 goals. So basically, kind of the short version is, we have one major goal for students to learn how to recognize and express their emotions and the emotions of others. The other goal is to be able to regulate their own emotions, as well as co-regulate emotions with other people. And then finally, we have a goal around responsible decision making. And so up here, you'll see for the first goal about developing an awareness and an ability to express their emotions appropriately. We have broken, we've broken that goal into 3 major sub-goals, and then we have the outcomes, end-of-year outcomes for the students, as well as benchmarks, all the way from grades K to 12. And we've done that for all 3 goals. That's goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. So we now have very clear expectations of what we want students to know and be able to do socially and emotionally across all grade levels. We haven't shared this with staff yet. I think it can be a little overwhelming. But the fact is, when we do implement Ruler, they will be hitting many of these objectives. And other programs as well, which goes to our second action plan. It has to do with goal 3. And so Kim still here? Come on up. So Kim actually, in working with Jen and another group of people from our group, was actually in charge of inventorying all the possible programs that we could use for SEL, as well as some assessment programs. As you know, we have selected Ruler as one of those programs. We're also using Ross Green with his ALSAP, assessment for lagging skills and unsolved problems. And we're also doing some work around restorative practices, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about any of those?
Well, restorative practices fits really nicely with the one of the tools in Ruler, which is called the Blueprint. So we feel that we can do some really good work there, and we have quite a number of staff trained in the district so far, and restorative practices can be used in the classroom as a practice as well as more of a disciplinary measure. So and we've done some restorative conferences with a lot of success in different buildings this year. So we think we're on to a really good approach of moving our data around discipline and our practices in a more positive way.
Andrea, did you want to mention a little bit about what we've done for Ross Green? I know there's been some pretty extensive in-depth training for him.
Well, we have a team at each building, and actually the high school has a team and a half of staff who are kind of in the training right now to become skilled at utilizing the assessment instrument and then the intervention post-assessment work. So it's really at the very beginning, but as the Ross Green work really looks to layer on when a student isn't showing progress in those skills or having difficulty with self-regulation of their emotional state or of co-regulating, that gives the teacher and the team an opportunity to kind of explore why that is, where the struggles are, where there are lagging skills, and then work with the student to identify the problems that they're having and become a partner in that process of co-regulation. So it's a nice layer of intervention when a student is struggling in self-regulation, and it gives the teachers a way to talk through where are they struggling with specificity to then be able to try to intervene. It's at the very, very early stages of people getting skilled at doing it. We want to solve the problem quickly. And sometimes when kids have had long time with lagging skills, it takes time to train the skills, teach the skills, and help solve the problems. So I'd say it's in the very early stages of development.
I guess the long-range plan would be for these teams to kind of turnkey some of this training with the staff.
Yes, I mean, when all the teams are trained, then we'll bring them together. We'll talk about where they are and what their peers or they see other people may need, and then we'll come up with a plan for what's next. I wanted them to all have a core knowledge base before we start talking about next steps.
So we've got 3 major programs that we are starting to implement. That will cover most of the objectives and the outcomes that I showed you earlier, but we still have some work to do, particularly around the area of decision making. We are approaching this SEL work very slowly, and so we're going to start with how do we recognize emotions, how do we express them, how do we co-regulate them, how do we regulate our own emotions, and then eventually we'll be thinking about how we can help students to make responsible decisions. The other thing that we've done in terms of assessment is that we, as a group, took a look at a lot of different options that we might have around how we might assess student social emotional learning. And we just recently made a decision about a program by a company called Panorama. Share that?
Sure. We looked at a couple different survey tools out there, and we landed with Panorama because not only can we survey our school climate, but also our SEL skills. And we have a lot of flexibility of picking and choosing what we want to focus on in using the tool. So we have, we have a lot of options, and we think it will serve us well.
What I really liked about Panorama was that it's customizable, and it provides students with, teachers with real-time information about how their students are doing so that they can start targeting instruction and remedial intervention around the students. You have a frown on your face. Do you have a question? You're just listening, okay. And then there's Ruler, which I have to say, I'm very pleased with the success we've had this year around Ruler. So you know that we started Ruler with adults this year. We didn't start it with students. And what we did was we provided some training through the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence for groups of teachers at each building. They went back and then taught the tools and strategies to the staff. At the end of the year, we surveyed the staff about how that training went, how they felt about Ruler, and how confident they felt about expanding that for use with children. And I just wanted to show you some results of that survey.
This was a culminating survey, but we did survey staff after each tool was introduced, and the feedback throughout the year was extremely positive.
So we had representatives from each school participate in the survey, as you can see there. Most of the people who responded were teachers, because that's the biggest number of staff, but we also had other staff members participate. You want to talk about this, Karen?
So, most of our staff participated in professional learning on emotional intelligence. We had, the schools had, depending on how much time, there were 3 plus a long block, a 3-hour long block of professional development devoted to ruler and social emotional learning for staff this year. In terms of the effectiveness, I need my glasses. Now I can't see far away. It's
Almost
terrible.
80%
Almost
felt it
80% felt it was very effective.
effective or effective. Lots of comments.
Charters were developed in all the schools. The work that needs to be done is how do we bring the charter to life, which will be our work next year. And as you can see, it was about 50-50 in terms of the effectiveness because it took a long time in some of the buildings of getting shared agreement on how, what the areas of focus would be. So in terms of bringing it to life, I'm not sure we have enough time to do that, so that'll be a focus for next year.
And I think, as Kim said, we really need to up our game in terms of making the charter come alive, where we need to revisit it at every faculty meeting, at every meeting. We need to survey people about how we're doing with the charter. So that'll be our work for next year.
So again, you can see 3 of the tools that were introduced is the Mood Meter, Meta Moment, and Blueprint. Not all the schools got to the Blueprint, but the effectiveness of the actual professional development was, again, very positive. You can see in the red and the blue. And then do they use these tools to regulate their own emotions? You can see that over 60% said yes. So not only are they learning about it and finding it effective, but they're applying it. So we're excited about that.
And we find it to be helpful.
So about half the staff felt that they feel ready to teach kids. I think staff want more time. That was you'll see that as we move down. Keep scrolling. Yeah. So having planning time and preparation is key, as well as more professional learning on how to actually teach the tools with the students, which is, we were very clear at the beginning of the year, this is just for staff. We're not teaching students, we're gonna make a decision at the end of the year. So I think that's why you'll see the numbers as they are.
And we have just developed our professional learning calendar for next year, and we've made sure to devote a pretty significant amount of time to helping teachers to get prepared to work with students next year.
So staff feel confident that they could teach students on some of the tools. You'll see again, the Blueprint is not everybody got to that tool. So again, there needs to be more time and more professional development on how we're gonna roll this out for kids. And then there was some confusion, I think, in the last question. So, again, you'll see over 76%, which we're excited about, and that's across the district, feel that we should move forward with Ruler. And that they would use it regularly with students. So we feel we have a good buy-in in moving forward. And it's the last question, and I think we worded this wrong, but if it wasn't something that you use regularly, is there something else we can do to address that and work? It kind of goes against, I think we worded that question.
Yes, I do.
So the data there is questionable.
But I would say clearly, staff are ready to move forward with this program, given that we give them enough time to plan for the professional learning. And that's what our plans will do. So that's Ruler, and that's social emotional learning.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah. Sure.
Only for information, the philosophy statement, is that something you've shared with us?
Yeah, could you answer that one?
I don't know
Yeah.
that I've shared the program philosophy for that with you, but I absolutely
Is that all right?
Yeah, could we, I had the same question, I'd like to just the philosophy statement, okay?
We should post it on the website.
Yeah.
Just we can put it under the curriculum tabs, but, send it out to
We do that for all of the other curriculum areas, so I don't know that we have a section on social emotional learning. We have to
Create one.
Create one.
Okay.
Okay, so that's social emotional learning. The next one is universal design for learning. We had several goals related to that. One was to develop a learning management system to actually house our curriculum and to train people in it, to train people in universal design for learning, and then to start embedding those things into curriculum units. What are known as the UDL checkpoints and resources. For the most part, we've made some really good progress. We have selected a learning management system. It's called Schoology. It's actually a program that we've been using for professional learning for some time with the staff, but it will now house all of our curriculum. We've trained the coordinators, the instructional leaders, and the curriculum writing teams on how to use that for curriculum. Once we start loading the actual units into that management system, we will then train the teachers on how to access it. It will have two components. One will be the official curriculum that nobody can touch, and then there will be a kind of a mirror version of that for teachers where they can go in and make changes and propose changes that then can be moved to the official curriculum. In terms of professional learning for universal design for learning, we actually were only going to start with coordinators and instructional leaders, but as it turns out, we went well beyond what we had planned, and actually all of the staff have now participated in professional learning around UDL. And I have to acknowledge Fran Compart for that. She was able to fold it into much of the work that she was doing around digital learning, and it was received very positively by the staff. Now, numbers 4 and 5 are the two areas where we have not made progress. Our initial plan was that we were going to, as central office people, take the actual UDL checkpoints and actually embed them in the units and then give that to the teachers. But we rethought that. So what we've done is that we've actually trained the curriculum writing teams in how to take the checkpoints and resources and incorporate them into the units as they develop them. We thought that was a better way to do it rather than us do it and give it to them. So as they develop units, they will be doing that, and then we will roll those units out next year. Okay. Any questions about universal design? Okay. So when it comes to performance-based assessments, we made a lot less progress. And I just wanted to explain why. In reality, the coordinators and I, along with Fran, have made a lot of progress in this area. But we realized that we were kind of getting ahead of ourselves. I kind of made the executive decision that we needed to honor the process of long-range planning, and we have not yet developed a portrait of the graduate. This work all has to flow directly from the vision of the graduate. So I kind of called a halt to this, and when we start again next year with long-range planning, where we have a group that's going to decide what our vision of the graduate is, then we can start doing this kind of work. We have all the resources available. We will certainly propose these to whatever group does develop the portrait of the graduate, but I wanted to leave it open to the possibility that we may have other areas that we may want to address than the ones I was thinking we were going to address.
That must be why we don't have it.
No, it's here.
It's here, but if you'll notice, it's all yellow. I mean,
More in front of us.
the order in your packet is not the same order as what's on here.
Let me go back before that, because I got it, okay, yes, before.
Okay? So again, there weren't a lot of goals in this area. We have still made some process, but I'm trying to honor the process of long-range planning. Wait till we have a group of people who are going to work on the vision of the graduate. Once we've identified what those qualities are, qualities, dispositions, skills, and knowledge that we want the vision of the graduate to have, then we can start developing performance-based assessments to measure those. Make sense?
Yep.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm now going to turn this over to Bob to do his high school. You can all come up. We're going to go high school, middle school, side and you can ask Lucille.
Oh, so at Wilton, at Wilton High School, we had 3 goals in our school improvement plan, one around ELA, one on mathematics, and one on school climate, and that's specifically connectedness. So Don is gonna talk about mathematics and ELA, and then I'm gonna give you the update on the school climate connectedness goal, and Kim may actually fill in a little bit, so, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the summary on our 2 academic goals were both centered around SAT achievement. The first on Connecticut SAT math, and the second on SAT evidence-based reading and writing. And our goal on math was to move from 73 to 78%. We did make growth strides on our math score, but we didn't hit our goal. We went from 73 to 76.4%, which is growth, but not the ambitious goal that we set. On evidence-based reading and writing, we did go from, our goal was to go from 89 to 94%, students meeting benchmark. We went to 90%, which again was growth, but didn't hit our goal. I also want to summarize the action steps we took as a team this year to try to move the needle on those 2 goals. The first thing was structural, in terms of how we planned the schedule. Even this year, we built in more common planning time, especially with the front end of math cohorts, where students are going to struggle. Some of the level 1 courses, algebra and geometry, courses of that nature. And the theory being the more planning time teachers have, the more they can collaborate to do some of the work that I'm going to describe in a minute. The next step was sort of research and review of the data on what types of problems, both in math and reading, seem to be tripping our kids up. So look for trends and try to remediate those trends. And a lot of really good work was done by our 2 coaches and our ILs to comb through student data and then break it down and try to decide, digest, what are the kinds of math problems and what are the kinds of reading problems that we need to focus on. And having that, armed with that, each teacher got a report about their current students, along with a little toolkit from the coach that contained either practice math problems that could be embedded in the curriculum, or STEM type prompts for the types of questions on the reading test that our kids were struggling with, so that they could be embedded in English and social studies, common formative assessments, and also in coursework. So that was very important. We also supplied extra support for students who do struggle in math or reading, either by being in a co-taught class or with interventions. And then in the case of 11th graders, we've always said we wanted to make this authentic learning and embed good Common Core instruction into our ordinary course curriculum and not turn ourselves into a de facto test prep academy. Having said that, for juniors, in the month prior to the test, they did get some immersion experiences meant to mirror the real test, so they were ready for that experience in both math and reading in 11th grade classes. So all those actions were outlined on our scorecard, and most are marked green as achieved. And those were designed to move us forward. And we have moved forward, but we still have more work to do.
So our 3rd goal on school climate, the board will recall that we set a connectedness goal. And the pre-assessment that we administered in the fall, we had 79% of students indicating that they felt connected with at least one adult, and 92% were reporting that they had an adult who cared about their learning. So we were right on the precipice, if you will, of that magic 80% mark, which we've been targeting. We're very pleased to report that on the post-assessment, actually 85% of students indicated they were connected to an adult. And then as far as having adults who are interested in their learning, that stayed pretty much static at 92%. So, these data are very encouraging. As I said, I think a few months ago, we always heard from Bill Preble that in a high school that 80% target is important. And to get to 85% with our work with our teachers who really focused on, identifying students who they felt may be disconnected at the beginning of the year and building those connections. We spent time in faculty meetings, in study groups, focusing on strategies that teachers can use to build connections with students, and actually took some of the qualitative data from the pre-assessment about, literally what students feel adults need to do to connect with them, and then showed that to the faculty and said, let's implement some of these strategies and, a toolkit, if you will. And so at this point, pretty succinctly, we're very pleased with the progress that we've made, and I would credit our teachers and our staff and Kim and Jim as civic and social instructional leaders, and we're pleased with the outcomes. And I think we need to drill a little deeper, but I want to believe that some of that improvement to 85%, we know we were making better connections on freshmen over time, which is really important as well. So Kim, did I miss anything? Specifics?
So I think the idea of surveying, being really specific and kind of surveying what we're asking for is really helpful too. It's very short, so we're not losing kids, so I think we can feel confident in that.
I'd have to think the block schedule was going to help that. I think the more concentrated time at once the teachers have to spend with students in the class, that 80-minute schedule, I don't know, intuitively, I just think that's going to help make the connections, give more time, in the classroom period. It's something that I just think it will. If we continue to work on it, I think it has to be a benefit.
We think you're right, Mr. Emily.
Okay, yeah, it's just, I think it's a good thing there. And it's good to see the increase. This is one of the areas that I've always been concerned about. There's just no reason for a kid not to feel a connection, ever.
Anything else for the high school?
Huh?
Any other comments, questions for the high school? Thank you.
So the structure of Middlebrook's plan very much mirrors our colleagues at the high school. We have one goal, addressing achievement in English language arts, one in math, both being measured by smart and balanced assessment data. Students have completed the assessment, but we won't get the data back for quite some time. In both of those action plans, you'll see a strong parallel. We've invested heavily in our assessment, in our study of classroom assessment for student learning, doing it right and using it well. Teachers did a tremendous amount of work. We started with the book study as a school-wide building common understanding and common language. They worked a lot within their department and within their IET to grow common understandings of their standards, and working towards the goal of having common assessments that are given synchronously. Where you'll see we didn't make as much progress is there's a straight up pattern in the fact that we were quite focused on the units that were being taught and studying the assessment work. That work ended up not leaving as much time for looking at student work as we would like. And looking at student work is very challenging when you don't have common assessments that are given synchronously. So the goal is that in the future, when our units are taught in alignment and that pacing is more common, that when they give the common assessments, that really we'll be able to reflect on how the students did on the assessments and what that tells us about what kids need next, but also what we need to do for refining the instruction. So I think we were shooting for the moon in terms of what we were trying to get done in this year. Even when we were shooting for the moon, we knew that we were making a 2-year plan. So that work will continue into next year. We're going to still shoot for the moon with the idea that we're going to get it all done next year, but we have a very clear path ahead of us and confidence that we're doing the right work. In our climate plan, we had a lot of success also with completing or being on track with our steps. You will see we were collaborating with some very enthusiastic staff members on, and one of the things that they put in there was this idea of doing sort of spontaneous, authentic opportunities for staff and students to interact. And what we've learned is that we need to be more planful than spontaneous. It was difficult when we had so many balls in the air to make that happen the way it was originally conceived. We did have some success with, some day wishes, including some, we had this joyful moment when Michael Cannoli was covered in glitter, and it was, there were some zany moments with it. And we also had several nice opportunities for sort of like the potluck style book swap things going on within the faculty. We are actually about to go into having our faculty student basketball game coming up on 1.5 days. So certainly some of that has happened, but not as much as that sort of zealous group of teachers had envisioned. So we marked ourselves as having limited progress there, but certainly I think we're gonna think a little bit more planfully as we go into next year so that we don't have so much pressure to pull the details together on the moment. So we did actually, because we surveyed in-house, we were able to, I didn't have the data on the connectedness question when I submitted the paperwork, but we did complete that survey just within the last couple of days, and we are at 88% of responding students saying, affirming that they have, what does it say? When asked to respond to the statement, I have at least one adult at my school that really cares about me and my education. Our goal was 71% coming off of our history with Mill Preble's survey, and we are at 88% today.
Great.
It's a huge celebration, Lauren.
Yeah.
Oh, and we just threw in our charter because we love it. We are among the staffs that really need to make sure that we're attending to it more frequently, and I think also attending to the mood meter more frequently. And so I'm just sticking it in all kinds of places and stumble upon it.
I'm assuming this is the Charter Oak, the Charter Oak.
Yes, yes. So one of our paraprofessionals actually did the original piece of art, and it's beautiful, and it's signed all around on the mat. But we needed an electronic version that we could mass produce, so that's my knockoff version of the
Very
charter.
nice. Very nice.
So that's all.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so we have really two different areas that we were focused on. Obviously, the academic, we'll have more information when we get our SBAC scores back. But there were two targeted goals that we used. The first being collaboration and teamwork, and then further down in the plan, you can see assessment planning and focused instruction. And really, those go together. We spend a significant amount of time continuing to build the processes within our IET time, and also worked a lot on goal setting, using formative assessment, and looking through that data to plan focused instruction. And I'm hoping it has a very big positive impact on both the reading and the math goals. When we, in addition to that, the coaching was a huge area of focus. When you move to school culture and climate, we also spent a lot of time working with building relationships among our staff and exploring the ruler. We felt that was a very positive experience this year, exploring all the different components of ruler, and we have implemented the mood meter throughout all of our different faculty meetings. In regard to building relationships, we've done a lot of fun things. Time for you faculty meetings. We start every faculty meeting and really every meeting with some kind of celebration, whether we're celebrating a colleague or whether the administrators are just recognizing something that was outstanding throughout the week. We have really spent a lot of time having the whole idea of mindfulness and additional movement breaks be part of the school culture. There was a worry in the past that if you went out for recess or you were moving around and having kids be more social and engaged with each other, that you weren't following the curriculum. And I think that finally we've come to the understanding as a school community that having the breaks where we're giving our brains a break actually improves the learning experiences for our kids, and I think that's a real celebration for our faculty. The one area that I was a little disappointed with the survey, because I feel like we've done a lot of really great strategies, was the last one, the student voice and agency. We did get the results back. We had set a very lofty goal. We started at 48% and we set a target for 60%. The actual improvement was only at 52%. So although we had a little bit of an increase, we definitely did not meet our goal. So we will continue to really work on that, because I think that one of the most critical things that our students can feel is that they have a voice within their school day. And so we will continue to target that going into next year. That's it. Any questions?
Anything? Thank you, Jen.
of the kids being above the 60th percentile in the math reading, and we met that. And we set a goal of 84% of the kids being above the 60th percentile in the math, and we actually had 91% of the kids above the 60th percentile.
Really?
Wow.
Trying to be done right
Wow.
The biggest pieces in our plan were around collaboration, teachers getting into each other's classrooms, starting on that vertical alignment. Even though the TC Project School was not in my strategic improvement plan, and it should have been because it was a huge undertaking, I think that just helped enhance what teachers do with those components of Readers and Writers Workshop. So Karen and Jen very eloquently talked to you about all those components, and because the teachers know those now, they can review math data, they can review F&P data, they can review work samples, and then they can target their instruction utilizing those different components to meet the needs of the kids. In addition, we had revisions to the math units, a couple at each grade level, which made a huge impact, and I talked at some of the math visits that we had about especially our second grade teachers who had some revised units at the beginning of the year in regards to addition and subtraction. And when they got to the 3-digit addition and subtraction unit at the end of the year that wasn't revised, they were like, wait a minute, this isn't how we teach this. We need to take what we learned before. So that was a huge compliment to both Trudy and to our coach Laura Cannell for the work that they do, because they're seeing that it's this is, we do this a little differently. In regards to culture and climate, we looked at that teacher efficacy statement. If I try really hard, I can get through to even the most difficult students. Our target was 80%, and we did our own survey, and faculty came out at 81.4% strongly agree, 4 agree, 16.3 unsure, and 2.3 disagree. There was a lot that we did around that. Again, we pretty much celebrate everything. And this year, instead of doing teacher fair, we did staff spotlight, so every week was like a teacher fair. They spotlighted something in the need to know that went out. We also had a faculty meeting where teachers shared their success stories. So they just did a little quick write about a success story, then got into groups, read their stories to each other, and looked for trends and themes across those stories and things that would work. And of course, we worked on the playground, and more we are integrating play, which makes me very happy because we have more play in our day, and we are more playful throughout the day, and our academic scores continue to either stay the same or go up. So that is the best news for me. And we did add some additional things to the playground this year. The kids thought it was very successful, and we surveyed the kids about how they feel about the playground and asked for suggestions. For some reason, everybody at Miller Driscoll wants a pool.
Yes, I'm aware.
Not really sure how to there, and tell cute stories, but it was really kind of cute. And then they came to fix the field, and so there was some kind of weird tractor there, and all the kindergartners were like, "We're getting a pool!" That's great.
It's really cute.
They wanted direct access off of Ms. Patalato's classroom with a slide and a diving board.
They would have, I think, so I brought Dr. Smith in, and they were like, well, I mean, if we have a pool, then we need a hot tub, and we're gonna need a slide and a diving board, and they had all kinds of great ideas.
That's pretty
So
awesome.
this is where kids are learning their words and their writing are incredibly powerful. Questions?
Yeah.
Can we, maybe we have a pool?
I'm just glad
Let me
that
just wave my wand.
just the MDTV anchors didn't ask about that the other day. I would have said something. I would have
Yeah.
on air commitment.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Chris Finkelstein.
Mrs. Pool.
MDTV.
And snack bar.
Just to be clear, we are not building a pool at Miller Driscoll School.
Again.
Well, if it rains hard enough, there's one way down the bottom of the hill there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well,
All
I
of
just
you.
wanted to say
All of
that
you.
all these charts, you truncate an entire year's work.
Yes.
And, 700 or 600 staff teachers, stuff and all the PD and all the kids, you know, doing their thing into all these charts and graphs. So we need to be reminded, or I need to be reminded, just how much work goes into it, and so how grateful the community and we are as a board. So it's really tremendous amount of work. So thank you.
Well said. Yes, thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you so much.
Okay, back to review and discuss number 5, or I'm sorry, number 6. Review and discuss religion in the public schools.
Great, so this is a policy. We didn't have a religion in schools policy. We had some regulatory language. There was a memo that was issued to staff for probably lots and lots of years that kind of laid out some guidelines, but as some concerns have come up over the last couple of years, this came up in the policy committee, and so we did some exploration over probably many months, I think, at this point, and we really spent a lot of time reviewing all of the ins and outs. I actually attended a couple of legal seminars trying to understand this. For some, December becomes a very contentious month, as particular holidays are privileged over others. So we felt like we needed to clarify kind of where the district is with respect to religion in schools and what are those parameters. So this is the first draft that attempts to lay that out. So to summarize very simply, obviously we follow the First Amendment of the Constitution. We remain neutral in all matters of religion. Number 2, the goal of the policy was to ensure any interaction with religion is anchored in the curriculum. Number 3, we also wanted to clarify our opt-out practice as experiences unfold. We want to make sure that students and families understand that if they're exposed to something, they can step out.
Is the regulation here as the draft, was there a base for this, or did it come from CABE, or did it come from attorneys, or what?
Yep, I think exactly. We looked at CABE primarily. I think we had a Shipman Goodwin model as well that we looked at, and then we kind of pulled the best of what was available.
Okay. And CABE did have CABE has a policy.
Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, what the challenges have been that said, let's have a policy? Is it mostly holiday times?
It really is. Holiday, music. So, just as an example, I got at Miller Driscoll, there was I don't know what, second grade maybe, there was a concert, and one of the selections was a song, This Little Light of Mine. And so I received a communication from a member of the community wondering about the choice of that song, with the suggestion that the history of that song is actually religious. And so we went back and looked at it, and it was. The version that the music teacher selected was actually a version rewritten by Rafi, and so it was secularized. It wasn't an issue at all. I didn't have an issue with it, and I was looking at that question in light of some other proposals here in the policy. But it's that kind of, as a kind of a low-level example, that kind of question that comes up. Oftentimes, particularly in December, so many people are just, kind of naturally inculcated in Judeo-Christian traditions, and so those make their way into school, and those can be out of sync with some of our students who celebrate other traditions. And so as our community diversify, we need to be more aware of who's in front of us and what implicit messages we might be sending. So, and we've gotten lots of feedback, certainly in the last couple of years.
I think that little light of mine just makes me think there's so many things we don't even stop to think about if you're part of the dominant culture.
Right.
And then, every once in a while, we need to. So I happened to be at the policy meeting the first time you guys discussed it. So it was really interesting to watch it evolve over time. And but just the discussion, I think it's good to have. And I think it's a challenge to the buildings as well. And us old folk who remember singing Christmas carols around the classroom piano. It's a really interesting exercise. Times do change, but it's good. I mean, lots of,
Yeah, and I think, Debbie, just to finish the point, religious history, plays so much a part of life and people's lived experiences, and there's lots of learning to be drawn from those, and so we didn't want to erase,
Right.
and we're not going to do anything around, religious, because religion and history are so inextricably entwined. So we wanted to be clear about what are the parameters that we explore, and we thought absolutely, through curriculum avenues makes the most sense. And then also, with respect to religious holidays, rather than, make a prohibition, we just won't talk about it or explore
Right.
any or experience any. Let's, take some opportunities to deepen our understanding of different traditions and practices.
Right, we're trying to strike the right a balance between too much and too little.
Yeah, and I think that's actually more in keeping with our vision of, a globally interconnected society.
The one thing I wondered about, just because I don't, again, understand the context, is the last sentence in the first.
In the policy or the rec?
policy. The spirit of respect, got that. Students and staff members may be excused from participating in activities contrary to their religious beliefs. Are there such activities that,
Yeah,
do you have examples of those, or is this hypothetical, or, I'm just sort of wondering about the context.
Yeah, so I would say, I think, and maybe we need to think about the way that's expressed and be a little more precise in what we're trying to convey. So go back to the this little light of mine example.
Okay.
So if the parent came back and said, look, I really have an issue with the song, I object to it because I think it's promoting a particular point of view, you have the right not to participate. I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at.
We didn't want to presume to know what would be, another person would consider to be in conflict with their religion. So we sort of purposely left it a little vague, I think. But maybe maybe it's too vague.
Yeah. No, I'm not, I'm just asking questions. That's
Okay.
all. I'm not,
Did it make sense?
it just
to you?
didn't, it's not that it didn't make sense, I was just trying to figure out what the situation
When you would do it, right, right.
would happen.
Well, I think it's,
Jehovah's Witnesses will not often participate in any sort of celebration.
And that's something that didn't enter into our discussions. Again, there's so many different things that are affected by this, and to write a policy
yeah.
that directs them all is very difficult.
I think, the key for us will be to think about the programs and things that we're doing and make that direction public in advance so people know what's coming and then can choose, rather than, obviously your example of this little light of mine, well, they probably didn't know that song was going to be there, so you say you can opt out. Well, how can I opt out if I don't know you're doing that? So I think it's going to be incumbent upon us, if we have issues that might be
Yeah, I think
questionable,
to the extent that we are aware,
that
or
we're
our
aware,
folks are
that we,
aware,
yes,
sure.
that we get those out early enough, and the parents have the option to say, look, I don't want my child to participate in that. That's fine, great, okay, they won't, but it's going to make it the burden is on us to be proactive as we develop things, to put them out there so parents know what's coming or know what we're doing, and can respond accordingly, and respond in line with the policy that was established, that were established.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and like so many other things, it's going to be incumbent upon, professional judgment in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
well, that's why ongoing discussion and
Yeah, it
communication
will
is
be.
just, it's
Right.
never,
Yeah, you can't.
it's never
This
finished.
is not, it will never be finished.
So with this one in particular, I thought we'd hold it for at least one more
Yeah.
review and discuss. I know Lori's not here tonight.
And we may
she
get some
wants-
feedback
She
from
has,
the
and
community.
I also would, am
Okay.
hoping that members of the public
Okay.
will not
Yeah,
hesitate to weigh
I think
in.
it's a great idea.
I think it's
And
necessary.
I do like the idea
yeah.
of keeping it as short as possible.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if we
Oh.
try to anticipate absolutely everything,
Yeah.
then it
You'll never
gets
get
too
it done. It'll never be done.
convoluted,
Yeah,
and it may have unintended consequences,
Yep.
so I think it's more important in policy to talk about the spirit, that
Yeah.
you're trying to get at, which is the respect and inclusiveness and
Right.
understanding and sticking to the curriculum and the separation as well.
So we'll discuss again on June 20th, and then decide maybe to even hold it over the summer, or to come back in September with a vote on it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next up is my favorite policy, 6141, curriculum design.
This is finally, Chuck, right?
Right. Do you want to just give the kind of 2 cents highlight?
Sure, so I really view this as kind of cleaning up the language of the policy and regulation, because before it referred primarily just to curriculum. And technically speaking, from my perspective, a curriculum is really what we want students to know and be able to do. The instructional program is about how we go about doing it, the materials and resources. And the 6141 process really involves the instructional program, not just the curriculum. So I just felt it was important to change this from curriculum to instructional program.
Yeah.
So that's what's in that.
It makes sense that the red line's all made.
Right.
As you read it.
Yeah. It's an updater.
And this has been approved by the Teaching and Learning Committee.
TNL has
I've
it.
been complaining about it.
Yeah.
It's been
Well,
nice
here.
and
I
like
know, it's just-
thorn in our sides. Or
I
it's
thought I did
fitting that that
behind
will be
closed
the last
doors.
thing we do in June is approve that. So if there's no additional discussion on that, we'll put it on as an action item for our next meeting.
Okay, and Lori was on the Teaching and Learning Committee, so she's fully
Yeah, she has seen it.
aware.
Yeah.
She can recite
Many
it.
times.
Yeah.
But always grateful to Chuck for his thoughtfulness and his.
Action items, discuss and approve the teacher evaluation plan, which we reviewed last meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion.
Good luck with this.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and I just will again reiterate my concern about the complexity.
Oh, the rubrics.
You know, I just, if there's some way that we can simplify or take it, I don't know, a more fundamental approach to what we're doing. I mean, it's just an incredibly complex process.
Teaching is complex.
Huh?
Teaching, our jobs are complex.
Oh, I know.
It's hard to
I know.
narrow it
We
down.
seem to have added to that complexity with this evaluation process. That's the only, I know they're complex to start with, and now we're just compounding it. But no, I'm in favor. Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's incredibly well thought out, a lot of work
Sure
went
is,
into it.
yeah.
So,
Anything else?
No.
All in
Thanks.
favor?
No.
Oh,
Aye.
sorry.
No, no, I said it last week, so thank you to all the teachers and administrators who helped. And
yeah,
Chuck. I mean,
it's
just
unbelievable.
Okay.
Makes a difference to have teachers involved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Discuss and approve, I don't know. Administrator evaluation plan, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Great, thank you very much for bringing this to us.
A lot of work.
There really
Thank you.
was. Comments from the public? Seeing no one. We are going to, I'm gonna do a motion, I'm sorry, Glenn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm
Okay.
opposed.
I know.
We're gonna put it to a vote.
Okay, our next meeting will be on June 20th. Good luck on finals for all of us students.
Well,
and